All right, this is Dark Days Radio. Happy Horror Days 2. I'm one of your hosts, Mike, and tonight I'm joined by David. How's it going, David?
Hey, Mike. I'm glad we're doing some more of this shit, because this is fun.
Yeah, it's really fun to just talk about spooky stuff, and this is a callback to an episode we did long ago. I want to say like 2013, thereabouts, and we're bringing it back, and we got even more ideas. And of course, spearheading some of that.
We did one a couple of weeks ago for Halloween. So.
Oh, yeah, we did that too. But spearheading a lot of these ideas, of course, is Chris. How's it going, Chris?
Hey, I'm good. Yeah, just spending my holidays writing and playing Cyberpunk.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Good stuff. And then also bringing up the rear is Chigg. How's it going, Chigg?
Going well. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm just chipper, happy, having a good time, and ready to talk spookiness. Because today, yes, we're going to give you a whole bunch of different ideas for World of Darkness and Chronicles of Darkness based off of different myths we found about the holidays. And also some myths that have nothing to do with holidays, but they just seemed fitting. So... yeah, it's going to be some good stuff tonight. But before we get to that, let's hop on over to the news segment. So one thing I want to talk about this season is, of course, the legendary Palladium Books Christmas Surprise Package. Chigg, what do you think of it? You can just make a giant list of books, send it to Kevin Simbida, and then he'll just send you a bunch of stock that he has lying around the warehouse. Doesn't it seem great?
It seems like the best way to get the worst games, yes.
Oh my gosh, Chigg, you're just spreading the Christmas cheer tonight.
Well, we've been over it before. I don't dislike Palladium games. They're a great source of setting material.
And with that, I think that brings our news segment to a close because next episode, we're going to have a lot more of the news and other good stuff coming up. And actually, Chris, just to give people a little taste of what's coming up, what is our forthcoming episode after this one?
The next episode is a interview with Fiona, who's the host of What Am I Rolling, which is a podcast dedicated to running one-shots. So it's really about how that podcast got started, what its kind of main aims are as a podcast, and just some insight into into her roleplay game experience since she started, I think, more relatively recently. Is based in London, done some of the more online stuff, and we have some discussion of how the hell do you get your players to start playing something other than D&D, because that's where she started. And part of the reason for the podcast is exactly that. It's playing something other than D&D.
Truly vital conversation.
Oh, it was a brilliant conversation.
Indeed. Outstanding advice. Very cool episode to have coming up. And with that, I think that brings the news to a close. And let's move on over to our main topic, which is spooky holiday legends. Whoosh. All right. So, Chigg, you really, I think your ideas really kicked this off. And what do you have for us tonight?
Listeners, imagine yourself sitting in your cozy home along the rugged coastline of Wales. It's a cold, blustery Christmas Eve. The wind is blowing outside your door, but you're warm and safe inside, when suddenly you hear a sound on your front porch. You stand to investigate, opening the front door to find the Mari Lwyd. A bottle-eyed, horse-skulled spirit of the season come to do two things, and two things only. Beat you in an epic rap battle and drink all the booze in your house. This ghostly visitor from Welsh lore is a spirit that challenges visitors to rhyming contests and, once completed, win or lose, causes mischief in their homes, drinks their beer, and generally makes themselves at home. Of course, one would think that maybe a strange rhyming spirit with the actual skull of an actual dead horse might have some more sinister origins, and one would perhaps be right. Also called the Horse of Frost, the Star Horse, and the White Horse of the Sea in the Ballad of the Mari Lwyd, the eponymous spirit is said to be a harbinger of the dead, a psychopomp connecting the darkness of the cold winter's night with the land of the departed. Defeat them in a battle of rhyme, and they'll be your boon companion. but fail, and, well, there are less pleasant fates than losing all your beer.
Oh my gosh.
So, how would we use something like this? A spooky spirit, dressed all in white, come to have a rhyming battle on your doorstep in the cold winter's night. How would we use something like this in a World of Darkness or Chronicle of Darkness game?
Yeah.
It's real tough. I got nothing, guys. This is just a whiff. I'm sorry. I can't think of anything.
No, I mean, it's challenging. I do want to bring up that this thing just looks frightening. Not so
It's
much
amazing.
because of the horse skull, but the fact that they always put the creepiest looking eyes that are just bulging and staring at you in the sockets.
So originally, the eyes were the bottom of a bottle of beer. The current incarnation uses Christmas tree ornaments. So they're bulging because those are, the little glass spheres that you hang on your Christmas tree.
Oh, I've got a story about those. I don't know if I put it actually. Yes, I do have a story. Yes, I put it in there. So to make that even sound even worse later, I've got a story about Christmas baubles and what they really are.
Yeah, I'd say it's a hobgoblin of some form. So, either of the Changeling games. Rhyming is very much maybe the rhymes are ways of trapping people. So, in pledges, in contracts, twisting the weird, twisting fate through rhyme and reason. And in doing so, trapping people maybe to whisk them away at some appropriate point. That's what I would do with this creature. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good one. I think the Mari Lwyd would be a really interesting manifestation of the visions and in previous editions the madness of a Malkavian. Maybe you have a Welsh character, and this is how its inner self kind of messes with them, talks to them. Maybe gives them insight, or maybe just causes all of their blood bags to vanish, for example. Yeah, it could be just like a really weird thing to have manifest in certain solo scenes in a Vampire the Masquerade game.
Now, the thing that's interesting about it is going to draw some inspiration. There are in Age of Sigmar Soulbound. Okay, there are the glaive wraiths,
Glaive stalkers.
glaive stalkers, yeah, which have equine heads, but they're ghosts, right?
They look like rats.
And they are the ghosts of. They look like rats, but they're actually horse-like. They're the ghosts of like bandits
and highwaymen. Yeah,
highwaymen. So again, you could perhaps steal that concept and apply it here, and you could actually have a ghost in whichever game system you want that is of a highwayman, and that would be kind of different to the classic Dullahan, or maybe it is a form of Dullahan. Basically, a Dullahan's technically a headless horseman, but here you could have a ghostly horseman that has maybe lost his head and replace it with that of a horse, of his horse.
Yes, and maybe see something that we wrote ourselves for Warhammer Fantasy.
Yeah,
to it.
A horse-eared headman, as it were.
Yeah.
On that kind of route, if you're kind of looking at, I suppose, a lot of these things that we're doing, if you can't fit them into the World of Darkness, Chronicles of Darkness idea, because it's not something that I'm particularly up on the knowledge of, and I kind of don't know too much about it, as you all know. One game that I've been playing a lot recently is Free League's Vesson, which is it's a Nordic horror, kind of Victorian-based Nordic horror game, and it's hit a lot of the top 10 this year of horror games. And it's all about the kind of the spirits of the land, and kind of you discovering that you can actually see these things and you have to go hunt them down and all sorts of weird stuff like that. But you could it's set in Scandinavia, as most of Free League stuff is, but you could easily transpose it across to other places. And the Mari Lwyd is certainly something that could really easily fit within the setting that they've created here, and the kind of like the ideas of those Scandinavian long, cold nights of hauntings and stuff that you kind of get with this new, I wouldn't say new, but the idea that's coming around now, the whole Scandinavian folk horror stuff that we're seeing around. It's a very good game, and I do recommend it.
I like how it's Chigg in the notes you've put that it's also called the Horse of Frost, Star Horse, or the White Horse of the Sea. So again, you can mostly take all of those and you could make it a spirit of winter or a spirit of the winter seas, and therefore use it in werewolf quite easily. It could it's just elemental. It could be quite elemental in its nature. And that makes sense because then the rhyming could be part of its ban. And so if you could beat it in a rhyming fight, in a rap battle, you can, it'll obviously, rather than killing it, but it has to perform certain duties to you.
I now have this thing that I really want to see a rap battle done in traditional Celtic Welsh, with all the random not using vowel thing that they have in their language.
We're going to need more consonants.
Yeah.
Chigg, you have to write this. It's now your challenge for the new year.
Well, if I must, I must. Now I have to learn Welsh.
Good luck.
All right.
Yeah,
I think it's on Duolingo, so you'll be all right. I am struck by this image of this horse skull having these riddles spoken to the player characters, because how would it really do it? It doesn't have a tongue, doesn't have lips. It's just gonna be chittering and chattering of the skull, which I think would be a pretty fun thing to use in, I don't know, like Dark Ages Mage or something like that. This could be a really cool manifestation of some sort of a guardian or something created by one of the old faith in that game.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think actually, if you also look at, say, in particular, maybe Victorian age settings as well, it would work. Because even though, I mean, there's quite a few TV series that the BBC put out which were like, looking at farming at different eras like Edwardian and Victorian and so forth, and Tudor. But the interesting thing is that even during the height of the Victorian period, even out in the countryside, many old pagan traditions still survive. So you could also quite happily combine the Mari Lwyd with also with the tradition of wassailing, waking up the trees, because that also happens at this time of year. And you can really then combine all of that to create some really good kind of folk horror kind of elements. Maybe it's not again, if you think along that line, and the animal kind of masks that are like feature in the classic in the Wicker Man, maybe this creature is not a creature, maybe it is a person who is is some sort of slasher, perhaps, in your historical setting.
Cool, I like it.
Well, I'm glad I asked, because all I thought of was to have them as a spirit on a Sin-Eater crew. So,
oh yeah, classic. That'd be really good. Yeah, a Geist could be a really cool Geist.
Since they are kind of psychopomps and move between the land of the living and the dead, I thought it'd be a nice addition to any Welsh or possibly other Celtic group crews. But
we also have Ghost Hunters 20th, the new game coming out on Kickstarter. So again, many of these things we're going to start talking about weird, spooky, spoopy stuff. I'm sure when that game comes out, a lot of these will fit within there, because you're going to play the mortal side of the world of Darkness rather than Chronicles. So you're going to go out and you'll experience maybe some more of these actual spoopy things.
And nobody ever takes the secondary skill rap battle. It's real sad. They're not going to fare well.
Let's bring him back. Let's push that forward now. From now on, Ghost Hunters secondary skill. Get the rap battle going.
Gotta have one guy in your group who has linguistics and rap battle.
I do remember a conversation from earlier today, actually, Mike putting some things in about our online Warhammer Fantasy game and how he's putting skills into singing. So I might have to bring this into our Warhammer Fantasy game, Mike.
I'm spending points on it. Let's use it. Let's do a scene.
Let's do a scene. Have you do
some spooky spirits.
Well, I'm more thinking of Gertrude and Klaus having a battle, but
you see, Bard actually in Warhammer Fantasy feels like a proper career because you can actually get paid for it as a career, not rather than in a fantasy sense. I'm a bard and do magical bardish things, which
you are a nonsense who goes to pubs.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Right. What's the next story we've got?
Yeah. Well, so as I mentioned earlier about the Christmas decorations that are in the skull of the horse, I might as well use that one. So this is the Witch's Balls. What I've written down here.
This is a family-friendly podcast.
This is a family-friendly podcast. Yes, I could go on to Skelkers, which are kind of like the Scottish version of Mari Lwyd on the Isle of something or other that I forget the name of. But let's talk about some balls. So this is, again, it's one of those legends and myths that we hear about, but may be true, maybe not be true. It's kind of like the origins of what do we call them? The balls that hang on Christmas trees.
Baubles.
Baubles. It's kind of possibly one of the origins that we might think of one of these. So back in the 17th or 18th century, people would put hollow round glass ornaments around windows to ward off witches and evil spirits around this time of year as the night gets darker and things. And we have the start of Halloween. So this is was an idea to kind of ward off witches and maybe even trap the evil spirits and witches if they try to enter your house. And they were popular not just within the traditions of England and Europe, but as we settled the New World at the time, and they became quite popular within New England. And because they were glass balls that were hung around, obviously they had a little hollow that you could put into them, and for extra protection, sometimes holy water was added into these. And they were often painted bright colors and things to kind of make them seem bright and cheerful and good, which is obviously the antithesis of the evil, dark, and horrible nature of witches and evil spirits. So, or if these witches and spirits, sorry, I'm just kind of reading this as I'm going along and figuring what I've actually written down because I've got other stories here. The brightness and things would attract the spirits to them. And sometimes these balls not only had holy water in them, they had string in there and like knots and which were tied in knots. One of the kind of images and legends in Europe and things about witches and evil spirits is they like puzzles and they have to kind of solve puzzles and things. So if you have a string with a load of knots in it, they have to undo the knots. So it traps them inside these balls. And this is kind of an idea of where modern baubles come from. They come from these talismans that were designed to trap evil spirits and witches and stuff. And this is a very bad explanation of what I've written down here. But yeah, so that's kind of one of the ideas of where baubles come from, these wonderful little shiny things that we hang on trees at Christmas, that are also part of the Mari Lwyd's eyeballs to modern ideas. So I'm not really sure how this would fit in World of Darkness, Chronicles of Darkness, as my knowledge of the worlds aren't that great, but
I got some ideas right now. I think one really cool thing would be if you look at Vampire the Requiem, there are the Strix, which are the kind of like default antagonists now for second edition. They're really interesting, these kind of like owl spirits that exist in shadow and such. So having these sorts of baubles like this, maybe they could be some sort of a ward or repellent, having the brilliant lights kind of shining through these from the warm interior could create kind of a mosaic pattern in the area, which might just keep Strix away.
Yeah, I mean, you could also go down the route that, maybe it is, there are some which contain, if you look at Mage the Awakening, maybe it's a way of trapping Gautier, the inner demons of mages, and they trap them within them to then release them to either they trap them because they want to trap them, so they're no longer affected by their inner demons, or they trap them to essentially weaponize them and leave them near their victims, and then the Gautier is released from the ball and possesses the victim. That's something which happens in Mage the Awakening, but you can see that also being used pretty much in any World of Darkness or Chronicles of Darkness game where it contains a spirit or ephemeral being ready to be released.
Could it? Could it also be like a Bane in Chronicles of Darkness? So, like, you have your spirits that are attacking a village, and their one weakness is the Christmas lights.
It can
easily literal translation of the story.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at if you go to the wiki and read it, also it has its origin as a talisman by European sailors. So that works quite well. You could potentially then localize it, and if you consider that glass making was, something which obviously was done in Venice a lot, so you could also tie it into that. And then you can have it contain various other things. So, it contains spirit, or as you say, it contains holy water. They could be thrown at the target.
So you're talking about holy hand grenades?
Kind of, yeah.
Sorry.
And then also because of the fact they reflect, and they as it says, some of them can be silvered. That may relate into werewolf. It may reveal the true nature of a werewolf because of the mirror element to it. So there's different ways you could definitely utilize the idea.
Ooh.
So in the World of Darkness, this could be a real easy coincidental effect for correspondence as a ward to keep the unwanted out of your home. You could also, if you're a mage, add the time sphere to make it a distraction while they try to work out the puzzle. And if you're warding against vampires, they got stuck right there in your window where your Christmas tree is all night long. Then the sun came up. Shucks.
What a shame.
All right, cool. So we'll move on over to my little thing. I wanted to do something a bit more unique and kind of like, out there for this holiday episode. So I started trying to look for like spooky Ethiopian myths centered around Christmas, and I couldn't actually find any. I'm not sure if there's none or if they're just not translated into English. And then I said, well, wait a minute. What about some like spooky Hanukkah stories or something? And I couldn't find any of those either. And then I was like, today we're recording this on Festivus. Maybe Festivus could be something spooky? Nothing. And then this morning I woke up and tuned into National Public Radio, and they started to talk about forgotten Yiddish cinema of the 20s and 30s. And thus I was introduced to the Hebrew myth of the Dybbuk.
The Dybbuk.
Okay. Two things. One, it is Dybbuk.
Yes,
and two,
I completely screwed up the pronunciation.
You're the one who brought up the Palladium holiday sale. And the Dybbuk has been in the Palladium system forever. So don't tell me you just heard about this today.
Well, actually, I didn't. As I will reveal, I kind of remembered it a little bit more as I was reading through some stuff. It's actually in Charnel Houses of Europe, the Shoah. It is mentioned in a little sidebar, which I remembered and then researched before this episode. Where is it in Palladium, though, Chigg? Where is the? Where can I find this intriguing manifestation?
It's in several of the Palladium fantasy books. It's in all kinds of It's in at least one Brift's book. They totally got it wrong. The Dybbuk is not a giant monster with 4 arms, 2 of which are big, huge, muscular arms, and 2 of which are little wimpy manipulator arms. But tell us more about the Dybbuk as it appears in mythology.
Okay, well, the Dybbuk, etymologists connect the word with the Hebrew word Dybbuk, I guess. I don't speak Hebrew, everyone, so, And that word, Dybbuk, means to cling or adhere to. This is kind of like a sort of possession situation. The old writings by Josephus in the 1st and 2nd century AD describe the Dybbuk as a demonic possession. The belief was that any kind of like deviance from religious orthodoxy would open up a household to possession. For example, not taking tradition seriously or casting doubt on Moses parting the Red Sea could end up to a possession taking place in your household. And as it kind of like evolved later, it became more of like a ghostly kind of angle, giving this Dybbuk more of a personification. And yeah, these possessions can take place in many different forms. Sometimes it just kind of manifests as really bad luck, causing a series of unfortunate external events like fires, car accidents, stuff like that. Bad stuff happening to the person. Other times, the Dybbuk inhabits a person's body, remaining there until they are driven out or a particular mitzvah is completed. So this is kind of similar to a lot of modern ghost stories where the ghost has unfinished business. However, this also kind of gives the Dybbuk more of a religious goal, since they are trying to fulfill some sort of a covenant or a commandment. Still other times, the Dybbuk possesses animals, particularly dogs. And usually, if there is a possession going on, a rabbi is called up to challenge and exorcise the Dybbuk. They usually do this by demanding the Dybbuk reveal its name and history, allowing the spirit to tell its tale, and then exorcising it. Intriguingly, apparently rabbinical scholars have assembled a book that has all the known Dybbuk possessions recorded throughout history, allowing them to track and how and where particular Dybbuk manifest. So how can we use these in the World of Darkness and Chronicles of Darkness? I think the Dybbuk as well would work really great using the rules from Inferno for Chronicles of Darkness, first edition, because that's really focused on a lot of kind of really religiously agnostic types of possessions, based off of these kind of general tropes of the different vices. So I think it's really strong for a religious representation of those demons if you want to use them. Does anyone have any other ideas for how to use the Dybbuk?
I don't know the rules or all things about Chronicles of Darkness. The thing that brings me into this story is the idea of the book. And so the book can become a source of power because it's containing all of the recorded history. So therefore you're writing things down, and the book then becomes like the source of power behind the Dybbuk. And I don't know how this could relate to any of the things, but that's the thing that attracts me to this story.
Well, that fits in with the fact that, because Hebrew, I think, is very much rooted around the fact that, numbers, letters correspond to numbers correspond to letters, such as like, knowing the name of God and so forth. So I think Hebrew is very much rooted in the idea that words have power. I would say a Dybbuk, if you don't go down the route, so knowing true names always has power, and that fits in very well with demonology. If you know something's power, you can control it. So that works well for Inferno. If you go down the route, though, of I think also the fact that words have power works very well with mage, with either version of mage. And so the Dybbuk could be. I'd actually be keen on using the Dybbuk as perhaps you could use it as a form of abyssal intrusion, that type of a demon. The Akamoth is another type of abyssal demon, so maybe a Dybbuk is related to it. If people want inspiration, there's a lot of media relating to Dybbuk. There's a film called The Possession, which is really good. That involves a child getting from a garage sale a Dybbuk box and slowly getting possessed by it. And that film's like pretty amazing. I highly recommend it. There's another film which I think is really interesting, even though it didn't perform very well. It's called The Unborn. And in this case, the Dybbuk is the ghost of, I think, the main character's like twin who died in the womb by umbilical cord strangulation. So she's, haunted by this spirit. Where things get really, and I think she's pregnant, so it's wanting to like possess either her or the child that she's pregnant with. So I think there's an element of that. I can't quite remember the full details. But where it gets really interesting, and if I look down the list of who's in this film, you have Gary Oldman, you have Idris Elba, and you have another character. Let me just check the list of... let me just check. We've got a rabbi. So Gary Oldman plays a rabbi, so that fits the idea a rabbi is going to do the exorcism. Idris Elba is playing a Christian priest, and then there's another person I can't figure out who is also playing, and I think he's playing a Catholic priest. So all three of these priests get involved and actually perform the exorcism together, which I thought was quite interesting to really break from that classic kind of thing of like, where, if it's something like the Dybbuk or other Jewish mythology, mysticism-based horror, it's a rabbi doing it. If it's anything else, it's always a Catholic priest. You only have to look at
The Exorcist,
of course,
right,
or anything like that. This is the conjoining of three related priests who are related by the fact that they know at heart that they have similar. There's even a section where they're discussing that they all that an exorcism rite is shared between all three religions, forms of faith. Like the core ideas of what it does is there, and so they actually work together to perform it. I think that's really powerful and could be used quite well in a game of World of Darkness. Ghost hunters, especially when you maybe put them up against such entities like from Demon the Fallen, and also easily done in Chronicles of Darkness.
Yeah, Chris, that's awesome. And I'm really glad you brought that up because I actually was really struggling to research how Dybbuk exorcisms actually occurred. I couldn't really find that much information on it. I was reading a few books, and I did find some mention of like reading Torah passages and the like. So that seems to be an element of it. But yeah, if you're looking for some further inspiration, that's definitely a good recommendation from Chris right there.
If you're going to go down the trash TV route, which I always love watching.
Yep. I saw this too.
Ghost Adventures has quality episodes related to it. So Deadly Possessions is the spin-off which has the Dybbuk box. And then they also had, this year they had I think it was a 4-parter of Ghost Adventures Quarantine, where they're in at the Ghost Adventures Zach Bagans Museum for Haunted Objects, and that's based in Las Vegas. And they do a few things with some of these haunted items, of which one episode is about 2 Dybbuk boxes opened up at the same time, which is just so weird. So if you can download it, watch it. I mean, it's always really interesting for that. And again, if you're going to watch Ghost Adventures, it's I think this is something which I've done before for one-shots using The Terrible Tale of James Magnus. But if you want to go down the route of using Dybbuk boxes, just play either Mortals, Chronicles of Darkness, or Ghost Hunters in World of Darkness. Just play a group of classic TV ghost hunters with shitty cameras and their devices trying to somehow deal with these entities. Also, the other weird thing is, I was looking at the wiki for this. Grandpa Boris in Rugrats tells the tale of a Dybbuk to the babies in Rugrats. What the fuck is going on there?
I saw that too. I wanted to look up that clip. Oh my gosh.
Did they mention that the Dybbuk shows up in the real Ghostbusters cartoon from the 80s?
It's in here, yeah. It's in an episode, which is... But then also, so does Cthulhu and everything else. So,
That's what got me started on all this.
No foot to stand on with the spoop that we used to have when we were kids. or even like 10 years ago. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, going back to it, I think the classic film to look at is either The Unborn or The Possession. The Possession's quite good because it stars Jeffrey Dean Morgan, who plays the Winchester brothers' dad.
He's the dad on Supernatural.
Yeah. It's a really, really good film. I think it's one of my favorite demonic possession films that's out there. When you've got like The Exorcist and the classic other one. The other one, another good one. I mean, actually, because we're talking about demons that do possessions. Another good one to look at is also the film The Possession, which stars Sam Neill and is set in the 1980s in Germany. And there's a lot of tension there, and it involves doppelgangers. So I think Dybbuks have an element of a doppelganger element to them as well. So that film, though, is phenomenal. And if you have the time, go read Howard Wood's their website. Can't think of it right now, but we've talked about it before. And Howard goes through, talks about the film The Possession in some great detail. It's an absolute classic. It's also very Lovecraftian if you want to go down that route as well. Cool,
nice. Chris, you want to take it away with your contribution?
Yeah, I'm going to go with a short one. So I thought I'd go for something a little bit more quaint and eerie, which is The Vanishing Monk. So The Vanishing Monk was spotted in the grounds of St. Peter's Church in Hereford back in December 1926. They were out on their nightly patrol, and they were surprised to see this figure, hooded, sauntering through some iron gates and then through a thick oak door into the church. Obviously, they were dumbfounded and didn't believe what they'd seen. They returned to the police station where they recounted the tale to their colleagues. And so, there have been more sightings of this vanishing monk, and there have been attempts to try and explain who this monk is. Some believe that the son of an organist played at the church, and he had similar experiences, and his father had told him to never be alone in the church or in the grounds of the church during December. His father told him of tales of this robed figure who was able to pass through solid walls and doors. But who was this ghost? So some background: the church was built for the monks by Walter de Lacy, and in the 13th century, and he fell from the tower of the church to his death. And some folk thought that perhaps this spirit is him. Others think, though, that the ghost is a monk who is known to be murdered by a marauding Welshman at the altar. There have then been later sightings, and some years later it appeared again close to the cathedral. And so it's something of a typical thing to go looking for on ghost walks within the city. It's been seen by more than 200 people gathered on a green in the early hours. Well, at least they attempted to see it. And you can imagine that such a spirit also becomes a problem for the locals who get tired of ghost hunters coming there. And perhaps the legend just continues because it's practical jokers. So, yes, a spirit that haunts the grounds of the church. I mean, my immediate option you can always go for is the classic thing in Chronicles of Darkness, first edition book, which is Shadows of the UK, which talks about graveyard spirits. And so this is an example of a graveyard spirit. And graveyard spirits, as we've discussed many times from that book, are a prototype for geists that appear in Geist the Sin-Eaters. So potentially this spirit could be a geist in the making. Any other ideas?
I mean, I just have one question. Why didn't the police go and check on the church, make sure there wasn't anyone ransacking it? Why'd they just go run back to the police station? Doesn't make sense to me.
Because this is the UK.
They saw it walk through a solid door. I think they were scared and didn't have a gun.
We're too polite.
All right. Fair enough. Yeah. How would we use this?
My instant reaction to this is taking things from kind of like like, if you know me, I like my Nordic folk stories and folk horror. Is there something called a church grim within these ideas? So you could, I don't know how you'd fit this into the Chronicles of Darkness, but in Nordic folk horror, the church grim is a creature that protects the graves and the churchyard itself.
That's the graveyard spirit that I just said that was in the book. So
so it's a graveyard spirit, but it's formed by burying the bones of the creature beneath the church walls. So
we've covered this one before.
Yeah, you can check out Secret Frequency Files #1 for my write-up on the Grim.
Oh, okay. I should probably...
Yeah. I mean, just to give people a teaser, one of the things, so you mentioned burying the bones underneath, like in the foundation, that kind of stuff. There's also another really interesting one about how, I think it was in Swedish churches, they would kill a lamb and bury it beneath the altar.
Yes.
Which is another, like, really, like, wild thing.
Very much they do that. So
this could be some sort of spirit that's been locked in here by those rituals, which I think is very interesting. Although I think it would be pretty cool since everyone's going to assume that we're dealing with a church here, they're going to think instantly, oh, we're dealing with Christianity. What if this is some sort of a pagan spirit that is somehow bound here or trapped here? Maybe they're a ne'er-do-well kind of spirit who's trying to maybe convert this place back to like the old faith and is doing something to this church.
Now, there is a game that I'm currently, like, as I mentioned before, I'm playing a lot of Vestin at the moment, and one of the pre-written scenarios for Vestin, so spoiler warning for people who are thinking about playing Vestin and playing things from the book that comes with the Kickstarter. What's it called again? The Wicked Secret, and specifically the Wicked Secret itself. This is exactly what happens. They take this idea of a spirit protecting the church, but actually the underlevel of that itself is more about the spirits of the land and the paganism behind the spirits of the land and bringing it back. So it's been used, and it's a beautifully written scenario. So it does work. And I will send it all to everybody. Not everybody, but we'll talk about it another day. But it certainly has been done, and it is beautifully written, and it does work. I've played
the other thing you could use this example. So the spirit is able to pass through solid objects. Yeah. So this is actually quite clearly a vampire in Vampire the Masquerade with high levels of protein, able to take gaseous form. And this is a very old vampire that makes the church its haven. It's how it maintains its humanity. It was perhaps one of the monks that was there when the church was built and has always looked over it for centuries. There you go. It's mostly a vampire, which is more than likely very happy that Mithras has bit the dust recently.
Man, Mithras owed me $5.
Yeah.
Oh, bummer.
Well, you just have to find the other body that he's in now, don't you?
But yeah, like you said, they used lambs in the consecration of some of the churches. Well, they used lambs because lambs are pure, and that's all well and good. But maybe they use something a little less pure, or maybe a little more pure, and that's why the guy's spirit is haunting here. They used him as the sacrificial lamb when they consecrated the grounds.
Yeah, maybe there's some ghost pigs.
We'll explain that ghost pig thing in a bit. But the other thing is, like, lambs are also, you could take it in the fact that they're related to rams and goats. Like, a lot of people see them related. Did they wrongly sacrifice a goat, which is obviously seen in this kind of time as a symbol of the devil?
Well, you got to sacrifice what you got. Sometimes you get a lamb, sometimes
the wrong thing by mistake.
Sometimes you got a kid. I'm a baby goat. I want to make that clear. A kid isn't a baby goat.
So yeah, it's like, oh, we've got a lamb. Oh shit, no, that wasn't a lamb. That was a kid. Fuck. Now we have a devil running around, and Baphomet comes out. You could relate that quite well to some of these games, I think. So
Yeah, definitely. All right, seems like we've kind of exhausted the Vanishing Monk. I don't know, David, did you want to bring up any other, like one more of your holiday spookinesses?
I'll give you a choice. We could briefly mention the ghost pig that has no story behind it other than the fact that there's a ghost pig, and that's that story. Or I've got something about the Potterheim drummer boy, or the tolling of the devil's knell at Dewsbury Parish Church.
Oh, geez, that's three really good ones. I don't know, Chigg, what do you think?
I'm always willing to hear about a little drummer boy.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go with that.
The Potterheim drummer boy. It's a more modern kind of folk tale within the UK and England. Potterheim is a large village, small town in Norfolk on what we call the Norfolk Broads. And the Broads are a kind of network of rivers and canals and lakes and marshland within Norfolk. Quite a big kind of touristy area. If you ever go to Norfolk, there's not much else to do other than go to Norwich, the main city, which is very, very pretty. Has more churches than pubs, but is also one of the most atheistic cities in England, as a weird kind of sidetrack. But it also has these things called the Broads. And they are beautiful, and taking a boat down them for the day is quite a really nice thing to do. But anyway, the Potterheim drummer boy. So in the early 19th century, so like 1814, 1815, sometime around there, England was embroiled in quite a few wars, as we were doing the whole colonial thing at the time. So I think the story is based in starts in 1814, and the 9th Foot Regiment of the British Army, nicknamed the Holy Boys, came back from Europe. They were fighting in Portugal and Spain at the time, and they had been reassigned to fight in the Wars of Independence in Canada. But they were given a period over Christmas and winter to come back, recuperate, and then they were going to be shipped off again. But there was this one boy who came back. He was 16, 17 years old, and he was the drummer of the regiment. And he returned home to his village. He separated from all his friends and military colleagues, and came back to Potterheim, this small village. It must have probably been at the time maybe 300-400 people, no more than that. And whilst he was at home, he'd not seen his fellows for a while. He'd not spoken to them all. And he was kind of hanging around, getting to know the people, and as is, he met a local girl there, and they spent time together, and they eventually started to have feelings for each other. But obviously, this is at a time when fathers had a bit of a say about how things went. And the father was not too keen on the idea of his daughter falling in love with this soldier boy who would come back from war and was about to disappear again, off to war, telling her stories of how these soldiers were only coming back to get some from the local ladies before they disappeared again and left the girls up the spout, I suppose, using the old colloquial names of things, basically saying that the father said, yeah, you're not allowed to see him because he's just here to have some sex, and we're not having that from you because you'll get pregnant and then you'll be left with the child, which is kind of a sensible thing, but the way they went about it, obviously. Anyway, being of the time and being a story, this obviously didn't stop them from meeting. So what did they do? During the cold winter months, it gets dark here quite early. Would probably say like 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the evening. It's dark. So the couple or the teenagers, they decided to arrange to meet at night. And obviously the boy, he's the drummer. So he told the girl to meet him by the sides of what is now known as Hickling Broad. It's an actual real place in Norfolk, and it is really quite a nice area. He told her to, and it's next to Potter Heigham, he told her to meet him on the shores of Hickling Broad at night. And so she went there, and he was not around. But this is winter. And as she stood around looking for the boy, she eventually started to hear the rat-a-tat-tat, rat-a-tat-tat of the military drum out on the frozen water in the mists. And she turned towards the sound, and she saw him skate towards her. And then they consummated their love, shall we say. And this kind of happened throughout winter. Every night they would meet on the shores of Hickling Broad. She would look out into the mists and wait for the rat-a-tat-tat of the military drum. Now, this went on throughout winter, and then as winter started to break, she went out one night and waited to hear the rat-a-tat-tat of the drum. And that last night, no rat-a-tat-tat came. She waited and waited in the freezing cold of the night. Not as cold as it had been before, but she waited, and he did not come. In the morning, she went out back to the Broads to see the ice cracked upon the Broad. The villagers dragged the body of the boy out from the lake or the river. Obviously having fallen through the thin ice. Now, it's quite a nice little love story and things, but where it kind of leads into what we're talking about now and the spoopy nature of it is if you go out to Hickling Broad and you stay there at night during winter, on cold, frosty nights when the mist takes over the Broads, it is said that you can hear the rat-a-tat-tat of a military drum out on the frozen waters. Never seeing anything coming through, but you can always hear that distinctive military rat-a-tat-tat. And in Norwich, this is only something I discovered by reading something else earlier today. If you go to Norwich, underneath the castle, Norwich has a really nice Norman castle, very, very square. There is a army museum, and inside the army museum, there is a drum from the 9th Foot Regiment that is related to that people try to relate to this story. And there's also lots of other weird, spooky ghost stories that relate to the Norwich Military Museum. We can deal with those on another episode of Who Won. But yeah, there is apparently his drum is still around in the museum in Norwich. So,
I mean, Dave, that's a good one. I think here's my hot take. The girl's father already killed the boy and dumped him into the pond just before it froze over. And this is some weird, like, Razalka kind of story that was going on here, where she was meeting a ghost each night.
Oh, I thought you were going to say that the broken ice was where, after the third night, the body broke free of the lake, in more of a more of a Jason Voorhees kind of
of
thing.
Friday the 13th, the prequel.
I think a ghost with some unresolved issues is always good. I mean, that's the classic thing of like Geist. In Geist, the ghost is not the antagonist. The ghost is the witness that you're trying to resolve things for. What I was going to go for, be a bit more creepy, is that the rat-a-tat-tat happens to just be the sound that some form of icy, wintry river cryptid makes, and killed the boy, because it always looks for someone to kill on the river, and now realizing the similarity between the sound it makes and the drums, uses it as a way of luring people to the river to take them. So the rat-tat-tat, I feel, would be much more creepy if it was a cryptid that had long, spindly legs, of which it used to skate across the ice of the when the river froze over, or taps on a tree in order to attract people towards it.
So taking it as a more kind of modern story. So this is the backstory for it, and you're kind of building on that, going, but this is where the story.
I'm thinking kind of like Spidicules from Kingdom Death, that kind of like giant kind of arachnid type creature.
Ew.
Are you implying that there is a family of half cryptids out there from this girl who met her boyfriend out there several nights, her quote unquote boyfriend? Are you implying that?
But there are like, it is a.
If not, I would like for you to please imply that, because that's what I want to hear.
It is a hunting technique of like certain creatures to like tap upon the trees to get insects to come out. So the idea that it does the same thing, but in order to attract humans upon which it feeds, would be really strange and weird.
Wow, no one wants to follow that up. That's oof.
Well done, Chigg.
Oof, oh boy.
So now there's a family full of half cryptids out there who have to lure some victims to feed their ancestor.
Chris, do you have any? You had a couple of different ideas. You want to bring up another one, or should we close out this episode?
Yeah, I mean, a very short one. I mean, I kind of just like the name of the pub in this. So this one is a Yorkshire one. So it takes place in Hull, and in a pub on Queen Street near Humber Street in Hull. And the pub was called Oberon, which I feel has a rather good ring to its name. And so in 1973, the landlord, David Henning, claimed he had his own ghost in the pub that was present when he moved into the property in December. And he called it the Christmas Ghost, of course. The ghost was described as either a dark shadow or a male wearing a dark cowl or brown tunic, which was found in the cellar. The pub itself dates to 1879, and which apparently is an interesting period in its history, because in October 1891, when excavations at the river property uncovered the old tombstone that read, "In this vault lieth the body of Anne, wife of Tom Michael Balby, mercer, who died in 13th of October 1703. So again, this is the case of, whatever, the classic case of where you build something upon holy ground or upon burial grounds, and it disturbs the land, and it disturbs the bones, and causes a haunting of some form to occur. I just quite like the simplicity of the ghost. But again, I mean, you can use this as inspiration for the fact that where you have some haunting taking place, and it's because the building is built on what was burial grounds, and again, your characters have to resolve that by some means.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is great for one shots or short little scenarios. It has a very simple premise, but you can have a lot of fun with it. If you're playing like Ghost Hunters, or for Chronicles of Darkness, just like a Mortals game, or Geist, you need to figure out who's being possessed by Anne, and where this cloaked figure has gone within the local community, and tracking that down, not so much because they're causing trouble, but maybe just out of curiosity or seeking to help the spirit move on, could provide a pretty interesting, fun challenge, and a lot of different opportunities to roleplay with different characters.
Yeah, it's the classic. It's a classic tale of the British pub, isn't it? I can think of many pubs
where people go to die.
Where people go to die. At least, yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Chigg. No, because there's we've got the same thing in Norwich. I live in Manchester now, but I'm spent a lot of time in Norwich, where we have kind of a story of a ghost in like one of the smallest pubs in England, and like one of the most haunted things. And it always brings that classic idea of the ghost hunter And what's the TV program that got taken off the air in England because it was basically proven as false with Yvette Fielding?
Most Haunted.
Most Haunted, yes.
It was still going up until recently. It's just changed channels quite a few times. Yeah, it's had like about 20 seasons of it.
Yeah. Where they just basically go around pubs and find ghosts.
They used to have Derek Acora, who was an ex-footballer, as their psychic, who
they basically disproved.
The actual historians and researchers took great delight in showing that he was a charlatan towards the end of like the first couple of series that he was in, and since then, they do a lot of the typical, you hear something and it's always off camera. It's very different in style to Ghost Adventures and similar. I mean, it's funny in the fact that it's Yvette Fielding screaming her head off at literally fuck all, or they're clearly doing table rocking and all that kind of shite. It's not even filmed on very good cameras.
Yeah, it's basically it's good background research for things because they do tell you a lot of history behind a lot of kind of buildings and stuff. Obviously, so fake in the way that they do stuff, but it does tell you a lot of history.
I think actually that's a very good takeaway actually on all of these very ghost hunting reality TV shows, is that the good ones, and I will say Most Haunted does a fairly good introduction on its episodes always, and Ghost Adventures equally is pretty good on what it does. I'd even say the one that Jack Osborne does with it is pretty good as well. Is they do a lot of good, they do a lot of decent like lead into the main bulk of the episode generally covers a good amount of history of the area, of the town, of the building, and I think that is useful if you're writing your own ghost stories or hauntings or demonic possessions or cryptids, to really make you think about how do I make this scenario feel like it's in a real place. And I think that's mostly the strength of, say, all the one-shots that we've done for the Storyteller Vault, is they feel like they exist in a real place rather than just like, you could take that story and put them in other places with some modifications. But I mean, if you write something to feel too generic, you just don't latch onto it straight away. You want to feel like, this pub is a real place. It is haunted, or this person is suffering and their family is suffering. You really want that kind of feeling of reality to it.
Cool.
So what you're saying is start with Earth and work from real world things to build a chronicle.
Reality's stranger often than fiction.
Oh, good, yeah.
Because fiction has to make sense.
Yeah. You just need to, you just take elements of like the history of a pub in one town and the church in another. You can create by that method. You could create somewhere that doesn't exist, but it still fits the history and the theme almost of the place where you're locating it. So if you're going to do a town somewhere in the Appalachians, maybe, you might want to have a read up on a few different places and ghost stories and hauntings and folklore in that area. And then that way you can create somewhere that doesn't exist, but it feels like it could do.
Basically, do your research.
Yeah, basic research.
Yeah, definitely. Chigg, would you recommend that people, if they're running an Appalachian game, check out Rage Across Appalachia?
I'm sure that there are other sources that they could go to, but it's not horrible. It's not the worst source of information you could get, and it does have a good little World of Darkness spin on things. So
good. Well, thanks for that capsule review right there. Really appreciate it. And so I think that's it for our holiday spookiness, because it's been one hell of a year, but seems like most of us are doing well. We just want everyone to just stay safe. If you're in the United States, really just try to stay home as much as possible, because things are pretty wild out there.
It goes double for the UK right now.
We just wanted to bring that up because there is a lot of exciting stuff coming up in 2021. We have like Virtual HorrorCon supposed to be coming up in the first quarter. We're really excited to be running some games at that, and maybe being on some panels. We'll see what happens. A lot of other great things coming up. So we just want to make sure that everyone just enjoys themselves, stays safe, and has a great end of this year and a great forthcoming year.
Yep.
And that's really just what I wanted to bring up.
And keep the spookiness.
Yep. Stay safe so we can talk about more spookiness. And Chris, do you want to kind of do the closing remarks here?
Sure, yes. So if you want to contact us about anything we've covered in this episode, we have some other interesting ideas, secret frequencies, things like that you wish for us to cover, you can contact us darkerdaysradio@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on Instagram @darkerdaysradio. You can find us on Twitter @darkerdaysradio. You can find our blog on WordPress. And also we do have some content on YouTube. We have our Twitch that infrequently puts things out. And of course, if you are interested in our campaign games going on currently, you can find us on Gehenna Gaming with our Enemy Within campaign for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay being run by David. And you can find on Gehenna Gaming's YouTube the previous campaign for Warhammer 40k Wrath and Glory run by myself. And also coming soon, I will be running a one-shot for What Am I Rolling podcast. I will be running Warhammer for them. I need to finish writing the scenario for that. But that will be an introduction to Warhammer for them, so that'll be good fun. But that's pretty much everything for now.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Take it easy. Be safe out there.
Be safe. Merry Christmas.
Goodbye. This has been an episode of Darker Days Radio. Special thanks to Occam's Laser for the intro, outro, and new bumper music from their hit album, 9 Circles. Check out the rest of their work at occamslaser.bandcamp.com. Yeah, definitely. And let's just hold on a second, because I was getting some weird feedback right there. It went away, though.
A bit of a hiss.
Yeah, was everyone getting the hiss?
No.
If you didn't hear the hiss, you were the hiss.
Maybe? I don't know.
As I say, I did drop my mic earlier, so I don't know if it's picking.
Did you drop it on a snake? Because that would do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. Let's just keep going. I might not even edit that out of the episode, because that was a good one, Chigg. That was a real good one.
Have you ever been to Norfolk? I would probably say half the people who live I'm going to say not many people probably listen to this from Norfolk, but yeah, you're all fucking weird and you all have 6 fingers and you're probably all related to cryptid. I can say that because I'm from Suffolk. I was born in Suffolk, and yeah, screw Norfolk. But yeah, anyway, local rivalries and all that.
Okay,
listeners, please go ahead and send all comments and emails about this episode directly to David.
Oh, geez. Oh, my gosh.